Hello, my American Studies 340 students. This is Professor Donald Earl Collins. We are now into week 6. This is the week that I'm expecting you to turn in a proposal for your research project, whether you're doing a group research project or whether you're doing an individual one. That's pretty rock solid in terms of as far as the next big thing that's due this week. I will talk to you individually or collectively via class about the contours of how well you did on your papers. I'm mostly pleased. There are a couple of you that might have some extra work to do in revisions, but other than that, I'm pleased with most of your work. I'm pleased with how things went. So there's that. And for those of you who are struggling either with the CBL component or with actually coming up with an idea for a project, please let me know. Don't suffer in silence. Get to the end of week 6 and go, hey, Professor, I don't have anything for you. Let me know. I'm trying to treat you as much as like adults as you're supposed to be treated, because you are adults. And we are not in a situation where we meet face-to-face and whatnot. And just because everything's virtual doesn't mean I'm available 24/7 either. So I need you to be adult-like and contact me to let me know ahead of time if you're having problems. And to schedule times with me. Do not wait till the last minute for me. Do as much of the readings of materials as possible, and so on and so forth. Much of you, 2 or 3 of you, complained last week that the directions in the syllabus regarding doing the papers wasn't 100% the way the directions read on for the actual paper in terms of doing the prompts. There's a reason for that. In the syllabus, because I took a look at it, this is, basically a third iteration of syllabi that I've used for all my upper level classes at AU. And the papers are basically, the changes to, the details of what I have people do in terms of papers are different, but I'm basically giving people a format for how to pull together readings and the, key readings that they might want to use. Doesn't mean you have to use all of them. Just means that you do need to kind of summarize what the readings are about. That in process of discussing arguments and making an argument. Now, I guess I could slightly change the language so that you don't literally interpret it as that you have to do each set of readings by week. But that would be a very literal interpretation of what I'm saying. I'm giving you a methodology as to how to go about putting your paper together. Not literally you have to do these things in order to do well on the paper, right? In other words, guidance. It's not supposed to be taken as you do this, it comes out like this. This is not a cookbook. I'm not telling you that you need a quarter teaspoon of salt and half a cup of sugar in order to make pound cake, right? It's not literally like that. So I'm just throwing that out there as sort of, this is more about you misunderstanding the meaning of guiding versus literally saying this is how I want you to write a paper, right? So I think if there's a discrepancy, it's probably equally on my end as well as yours. I'm willing to take half the blame if that's blame to take, really. But the bottom line is that it really comes down to this: if you do have issues with questions like that, you should ask me. Right? I'm here. Right? Read the syllabus. I ask you to read the syllabus first, so that you have some basis for asking me a question. That's a question that should have been asked, and not brought up after the fact. So, again, it's not, I'm not perfect, but I'm also not here to basically try to, for lack of a better way of putting it, hold your hand. Meaning that I'm depending on you to do a lot of things on your own, and if there are any discrepancies, to let me know about them. I can't possibly foresee when people take things so literally that they're going to write a different kind of paper than the one I expect them to write. So in that sense, maybe there's some fault in terms of communication, but it's a two-way street here. I can communicate as clearly as I can, and if I mess up or if there's some discrepancy, you need to let me know. So that's the part that I think that you guys need to take up more. Instead of being passive as students, expecting me to have everything laid out for you, so all you have to do is mix the ingredients and make your cake, Sometimes this requires some, hey, clarify this. Hey, I'm going to do it this way. Is that okay? Hey, I'm going to approach it this way. Does that work for you? Give and take. I'm giving you some authority in terms of giving you an opportunity to give yourself a grade. That also means that you have to be more proactive in your own learning. So, and I'm not saying that to be arrogant or because I don't feel like doing as much work or whatever. I'm saying that because that's the way this course is supposed to work, whether it would be face-to-face or online. So please, please, by all means, take charge over your own learning in this course as much as you can. And all the materials I'm providing for you is to help facilitate that, right? This is an upper level course, so I'm expecting you to do more, not less than what you would do if you were taking an intro level course, okay? So we're talking about teacher education, teaching and liberation, teaching as a form of social control. And that sort of relates to what I've just been talking about for the last few minutes about my role as your professor, facilitator of discussions in this course, right? The real question here gets wrapped up in everything for this particular week, and something that will carry on throughout the course really is, why do we blame teachers for so much, right? We blame them for everything, for ruining kids' lives, for putting them on the path to prison, for putting them on a path where they're not going to graduate or have to do a GED instead. Path where, or conversely, teachers are saviors, they're transformative. If it weren't for this teacher, I wouldn't be where I am today. If it weren't for X teacher, my life, wouldn't have been as great as it's been. This teacher recognized something in me and saw something in me. And the truth is, most teachers are not transformative in a negative or a positive way, to be perfectly honest, right? They have a job to do. They might love kids. They might like kids a lot. They might like teaching. They might like the process of teaching or discussion. But it's still a job, and there are many other tasks to this job besides what they do in front of the classroom. Most notably, grading, which people do not seem to understand, takes up a lot of time, right? And how do we get to this point where people question educators in such a way as that educators don't know what they're talking about? How do we get to this point? And we got here through several means. Part of it is the realization that people don't respect authority, right? Especially in this country. Unless the authority comes with money and actual real power, they tend not to respect authority. And that goes with a profession that has been feminized since the 1870s. I'm pretty sure you all have noticed that as you have moved up from, if you have a memory that goes as far back as pre-K or preschool, which is, and I always never understood why pre-K is for 3-year-olds, but preschool is for 4-year-olds. Shouldn't it be preschool for 3-year-olds and pre-K for 4-year-olds? But no, it's the other way around. It seems nutty to me. But either way, from that point to kindergarten, you're almost exclusively seeing women in the role of caregivers and teachers and educators. Kindergarten through 5th grade, it's predominantly women who are doing the work of teaching at younger ages. As you get toward 5th grade and toward middle school or junior high school, 6th, 7th, and or 8th grade, depending on where in the pendulum you are, you start seeing more men, more males as teachers and educators in that sense, not just as custodians or food service employees, right? And then by the time you get to high school, you certainly start to see a flip. It might be majority women teaching, but there's a substantial number of men now in those professions. So this is a feminized field. Teaching and education is seen as women's work, and education in general is seen as something that, if you don't have any other skills, this is what you do. Or as Charles Hammond in Houston put it, which is now famous saying, for those who can't do, teach, and those who can't teach, teach Jim kind of thing, right? And so as a result, we don't have any respect for the difficulty of the work that teachers have to do. People talk about we put too much on law enforcement, right, in terms of, dealing with the homeless, dealing with domestic violence, dealing with, other kinds of personal privacy issues. and not actual, felony types of crimes. I think the same thing is true, actually true, of teachers. We're expecting teachers to make up for all the other ills in our society, systemic racism, make up for misogyny, misogynoir, homophobia, the class divides, the fact that particularly in the public school setting, a majority of students might be have-nots, might not have enough in terms of reading ability, books at home, food to eat, a roof, expectation of a roof over their head, of rent being paid or a mortgage being paid every month, of their parents being able to consistently provide for them, right? To even to the point where they might not get enough sleep, they might not have anything to eat before an exam. And yet we are increasingly expecting teachers to play the role of psychologists, social workers, lawyers, as well as, disciplinarians, punishers, as well as teachers. They expect all of that to be done in a profession that has been feminized since the last third of the 19th century, right? And so the end result is when teachers screw up, we blame them. I mean, and mind you, they might not have even screwed up. They might be doing their job, but the school district screwed up, or the principal screwed up, or assistant superintendent for academic affairs of public schools for this particular school district might have screwed up. But we still blame the teacher because they're on the front line. They're the ones dealing with the kids every day. And so we have this expectation that if they mess up, if they're not perfect, that somehow it's their fault. And so the result is that over the last, say, 30, 35 years or so, the profession has become more circumscribed in terms of, not in terms of the scope of what is expected of teachers, but in terms of the level of autonomy teachers are given, right? Teachers' autonomy to teach what they want to teach is limited, right? You might be able to get away with a few things in an English lit course, right, where you might be able to introduce James Baldwin here, or Toni Morrison there, or T.S.A. Lehman, and say you want to read his book Heavy or Long Division, for instance, or maybe throw in a little bit of Roxane Gay here or there. You might be able to wiggle that in, and the reading you're doing of Melinda Anderson is of someone who's actually was able to do this and make this work for her, even though her prescribed curriculum was basically very Western, very Eurocentric, very white, male-centered. She was able to go ahead and mix other things in and reclaim some of our autonomy in the process, winning her Baltimore City's Teacher of the Year in 2018. So you're going to be reading about that this week. But that's just one example of so many examples where teachers do not have the autonomy, generally speaking, to go ahead and do that. And usually you have to be there a number of years even in order to give yourself the level of autonomy necessary to sort of flip the script so that you can reach your students in a better manner than just testing them and just following the lesson plans that's drawn up by your school district or by the state, right? And so we put a lot on teachers to expect them to do certain things, right? When in point of fact, if they don't do those things, their teachers' unions can't really fully protect them from possibility of losing their tenure, losing their job, of being reassigned to another school, and in all likelihood where they would burn out. And so so that's the question. Why? So that's one question. How do we blame teachers is one question. And why do we blame teachers? The other question really is, how does one use the profession to be radical, to flip the script, to become transformative? Well, you have to stay in the profession in order to flip the script, right? The average teacher only stays in the profession 4 to 5 years. That's just a fact. And with so many teachers now coming from Teach for America and the New Teacher Project, the New Teacher Project is actually fairly admirable, right? Because they actually cover you getting a master's degree and being credentialed while you're in school, because they're expecting you to stay more than 2 years. Teach for America is basically Peace Corps in the United States for privileged elite students who have gone to Ivy Leagues and elite schools to go back and give for 2 years before they get a job on Wall Street or go back to school and get a master's degree or a law degree or a medical degree. They're not planning on staying. So there are fewer and fewer people coming into this profession, and there actually is an opportunity gap in terms of the number of people in the profession versus the number of people who need to be in the profession. And then you throw in the issue of race, in addition to class, in addition to feminization, is the fact that there's so few people of color in the profession compared to the number of students that are in public schools. More than 50%, something like 50 to 55% of all public school children now in the United States are black, indigenous, Latinx, Asian, someone other than being white, right? Yet only 18% of the profession consists of people of faculties of color, faculty of color, teachers of color, right? There was a study done by the Brookings Institution in conjunction with ETS showing that it's going to be at least a century before the pipeline catches up with the current proportion of students in the United States, particularly for black students. It is extremely important to have teachers who look like you. It is important, but at the same time, you have to be in a position where it's not just about teachers who look like you, but you have teachers who can empathize with you, who are trying to really understand what you are going through as a student holistically, not just academically, but holistically, your community, the people you're around, the issues that you have to deal with, in terms of your family, in terms of friends, in terms of your community, all of those sorts of things. And so a transformative teacher really understands those and tries to approach this in a way that's collaborative, maybe not treating their students like they're adults, but giving up some of the control of their classroom so that they can reach their students, so that they can talk, so that they can be reached academically, so that it's not just about them following the script and making sure that they get good test scores, but also in the process of doing so, they're taking something with them, whether it's through literature or through history or through mathematics or through competition or through other means that keeps them coming back to school, even if everything else in their life is kind of, off kilter or even completely messed up. That's hard work, and it's hard work that we, even as educators, tend to underappreciate. We don't fully appreciate how hard it is to be a teacher, and that's not, that can apply to pre-K and preschool. It certainly applies at the K-12 level. It certainly even applies to people at the undergrad and graduate level, us professors, particularly professors who are not tenured, stream, what we now generally call contingent faculty, people like me, who do this because they like doing this, right? They do this because, not just because of the paycheck, because we actually do like teaching. We like teaching and working with students and so on. But it's also hard work to try to reach people, to try to get them to understand. And we're not just trying to give you an A. We're trying to make sure that you walk out of this classroom with something more, with something that you've learned, something that you can take and use in your life, professionally, personally, in terms of your relationships and so on. And so that's what makes this work difficult, is that you're working with people who oftentimes don't want to hear a thing that you have to say. Whether it's me talking to my classes or whether it's high school teachers in communities that are facing extreme poverty and crime and other issues, whether it's in private school and you're working with a bunch of pampered elite kids who believe that their future's already set in stone and they don't need to hear a freaking thing that you have to say, or whether it's kids who are too tired to keep their eyes awake, right? All of that, right? That's the issue of how can you be transformative in environments that are stifling, they're about the social control of kids, but also social control of teachers because of the feminized, racialized view of who should and shouldn't be in front of kids in the classroom. All important for you to consider this week.